Hey, what's up guys, how's it going? This is Watch from the MW Technology channel, and in this video we'll be doing a head-to-head comparison between the Samsung Galaxy Note 4, which is becoming the most popular Android smartphone that's available, versus the Oppo R5, which is right now the thinnest smartphone in the world right now. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the advantages and disadvantages of both of these two smartphones. So if you're interested in perhaps upgrading to one of these or just seeing how they compare against each other, this is a perfect video for you. So without any further ado, let's get right into this comparison. Now, the real big kind of unique factor of the Oppo R5 is kind of an engineering one, and that's certainly something we don't see in a lot of smartphones these days. And it's a real testament to Oppo as a design company, kind of pushing the envelopes of what a smartphone can do and how thin you can actually make a device that has all of the latest features that you would expect from a modern day smartphone. And in terms of overall thickness, next to the Note 4, you can definitely see that we have a massive difference in terms of thickness. Basically, we're measuring about 4.85 millimeters on the Oppo, which is incredibly half the thickness of what we see on the Note 4, which measures about 8.5 millimeters. Now, we do have to consider that the Note 4 is a phablet device. It's a larger screen phone, but not by a massive margin. As you can see side by side, the footprint difference between these two is that we do have the Oppo, which is a little bit more compact, measuring about 74.5 millimeters in terms of its width and about 148.9 millimeters in terms of its height, versus the Note 4 measuring about 153.5 millimeters in terms of its height and about 78.6 millimeters in terms of its width. And the really impressive thing about both these two smartphones is they're really made out of really high quality materials. The Samsung notably is made out of a mixture between polycarbonate plastics, and it has a metal band around it, which definitely adds to the overall premium feel and design of the smartphone, which is a nice direction to see by Samsung. But taking a look at the Oppo R5, you can see that it has a nice metal back on the back of the device and a metal surrounding a border as well. Now, in terms of comfort, I do have to say, ergonomically, the Note 4 is a little bit more comfortable in the hand, even though it's a larger phone, because it has nice subtle rounded curves around all the edges, and it has a nice kind of soft touch back that definitely makes it more comfortable and easy to use, especially for long periods of time. I'm not going to say that the Oppo R5 is uncomfortable by any means, but it's certainly not as pleasant in the hand because it does have a little bit more squared off edges all around the device, which again is not sharp by any means, but not as pleasant to use compared to the Note 4. Now, just to give you guys an idea of how thin the Oppo R5 is compared to a regular smartphone, you don't even have room for an 1/8 inch headphone jack connection, so you have to use a micro USB adapter that comes with the phone, which is not that big of a deal once you get used to it. But the real interesting part of this comparison is definitely going to rely on the screens on these two devices. Now, in terms of actual resolution, we have a Quad HD on the Note 4, which is a 2560 by 1440 display with a PPI count about 515 on the Note 4, versus we have a full HD screen on the Oppo that has a pixel density rating of about 423 PPI. Now, the cool thing about both displays is that they're both using AMOLED technology, which is organic LED. That gives you the best black levels possible on any display, with great energy efficiency and very vibrant color saturation, and you get a pretty nice kind of overall display that gives you a lot of different features. It's pretty much the most advanced display technology that's available in the market for any kind of display, and the Samsung is really leading edge in terms of display technology, and the Note 4 is a great example of that. It gives you excellent overall color saturation, and the white levels are a little bit more balanced compared to what you find on the Oppo, even though it's probably using a very similar display, but the color accuracy in terms of the software hasn't been fine-tuned as what we see in the Note 4, which probably has the best display out of any smartphone in the marketplace right now. Now, one thing I should mention about the Oppo is that it does have a fairly large border that goes all around the display between the screen and the bezel itself, which is definitely annoying if you have the white version. As you can see, the black border definitely kind of detracts from the overall sleek look of the phone. I'd love to see the screen right against the bezel itself like you see in most traditional smartphones, but unfortunately that's not the case on this ultra thin Oppo. Now, moving on in terms of the internal differences between these two smartphones, we do notice that we have a different architecture on both of them. On the Note 4, we have the latest generation Snapdragon processor, which is the 805 chip, and that's the latest and greatest quad-core CPU they can get in a smartphone, versus the Oppo is using a combination of 2 ARM quad-core processors, one clocked in at about 1 GHz, the other one clocked about 1.5 GHz. And in terms of RAM, we have 1 more gigabyte on the Note 4 at 3 gigabytes of RAM versus 2 gigabytes of RAM on the R5. Now, taking a look at the benchmark results on Geekbench 3, we definitely find that the 805 chip on the Note 4 is definitely going to give you better overall performance in terms of multi-core and the single-core score. Now, in real life, both of these phones are pretty usable in terms of all different sorts of applications, but for pure bragging rights, if you want to say that you have the fastest Android possible, the Note 4 with the 805 chip is certainly within that category. Now, moving on, let's talk about some of the unique factors about both smartphones. Now, there is a huge laundry list of features of what the Note 4 is capable of. Some of the things that I really like is that it has the fingerprint scanner and a heart rate monitor at the back of the device, similar stuff that we found on the Galaxy S5 that we saw earlier in 2014. Additionally, you have the S Pen integration, which a lot of people swear by, especially if you take a lot of notes or if you want to just get more precision in your work when you're using the smartphone, although it's just as good when using the phone just with your fingers. Now, one other cool thing I like about the Note 4, especially because of its larger screen size, you could take advantage of the multi-window multitasking mode, which is definitely a handy way to basically run a whole bunch of different applications in the background side by side. There's also a new pop-up window multitasking mode, which is also kind of convenient and kind of makes the phone more in lines of a laptop or kind of a desktop computer, especially if you're going to use this thing as your kind of main computer. Now, the cool thing about the ColorOS skin that's running on top of Android 4.4 on the Oppo is that it has a lot of different customization options, much of the similar way that we find in the TouchWiz interface on Samsung. But I think overall, aesthetically, ColorOS looks a lot better, and there's a lot more capabilities in terms of changing the look because you have all these customized themes you can basically input. You can also input basically a stock version of Android that looks very similar to basically Jelly Bean or KitKat or anything like that, and there's lots of customization in terms of overall look. But the stock ColorOS looks really good. I have no problems with it. Very clean, modern design, and I think TouchWiz certainly should take a look at what CyanogenMod is doing and what ColorOS is doing, kind of implement kind of a fresher look. And the TouchWiz is kind of looking a little bit dated these days compared to some of these skins we find in these other smartphones. One of my favorite features about ColorOS is the gesture integration. Now, we have a lot of gesture control on the Note 4, but I think the implementation on the Oppo is a lot better. We have tons of on-screen gesture controls, so you can pinch out anywhere in the screen, which will open up the camera no matter where you are on the phone operating system. You can also slide your fingers up and down to take a quick screenshot, and there's a ton of off-screen controls when the phone is on standby mode. Double tap to open up the screen. You can also draw a circle to open up the camera, and you can add your own custom gestures, so you can, for example, draw a V and open up the flashlight application automatically when the phone is off, which is definitely a handy tool. I got that idea from actually using the OnePlus One, which has a lot of these gesture controls as well. So as you can see over here, I'm a big fan of the ColorOS on the Oppo, and I definitely like it better than the TouchWiz interface that we find on the Samsung products. Moving on, let's talk about the camera capabilities on these two smartphones. In terms of the rear-facing camera specifically, we're looking at 13 megapixel stills on the Oppo R5 versus 16 megapixels with optical stabilization on the Note 4. And certainly both of them have LED flash capabilities. And in terms of video capabilities, we have full 4K recording capabilities at 30 frames per second on the Note 4. And the Oppo cannot do 4K. It can do 1080p at 60 frames per second. And we both have 720p at 120 frames per second for slow motion modes on both of the devices. Now, taking a look at the actual results of the two cameras, I would definitely have to say that the Note 4 delivers better, clearer looking images with better overall color rendition, and surprisingly a little bit better in terms of low light reproduction as well. And sharpness wise and everything wise, I would have to say the stills capabilities hands down has to go to the Note 4 based on my personal test. Now, in terms of video capabilities, again, same theme. We definitely have a better video camera on the Note 4. I wouldn't say that the Oppo R5 is bad by any means. It's a very usable camera. It's up there with most of the modern day 1080p cameras that you find in most camera phones, but I think the Note 4 definitely has one of the better cameras available in the marketplace, and this comparison definitely kind of confirms that notion. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about is really highlight some of the strengths of the Note 4 and probably the biggest weakness of the R5, which is battery life and overall versatility and upgradability. In terms of upgradability, we have a standard micro SD expansion slot on the Note 4, so you can upgrade the memory up to 128 gigabytes, which is fantastic. We don't have that slot available on the Oppo, and we have a full user replaceable battery on the Note 4, which is fantastic to see as well. Now, the battery performance on the Note 4 is quite incredible. It's probably one of the best performing smartphones in the marketplace when you're taking a look at the battery performance. We have a 3220 milliamp hour battery versus 2000 milliamp hour battery on the Oppo, and basically in terms of overall performance, everyone's performance is going to fluctuate depending on how they use the smartphones, but basically after a couple of days of usage on the Oppo, I managed to struggle to get out through a 14-hour day versus the Note 4 can no problem last 2 days without losing a sweat. It has a lot of different battery saving modes, and even though both of them have organic LED technology, which is definitely going to save you a lot in terms of battery performance compared to a traditional display, you still don't have that kind of comparison and capabilities on the Oppo when you're looking at the incredible battery performance of the Note 4. And this is the big compromise of the R5. Because it's so thin, we can only fit a certain size of battery in there, versus on the Note 4 you can fit a large battery and even have the option to swap it out and keep going as you go along, especially if you don't have any place to charge, if you do a lot of traveling and things like that. But on that, guys, that's really it. I would love to hear your opinions on the comparison. Let me know what you guys think of what the Oppo R5 has to offer for you guys specifically and your specific needs. I'd love to hear all your thoughts down in the comments section below. Make sure to give us a thumbs up. That would be awesome and tremendous if you could. And make sure to check back to our channel for all the other comparisons that we're doing with the Oppo R5. We've done a comparison with the iPhone 6. We'll do a comparison with the 6 Plus and also the Sony Xperia Z3, which has a lot of different similar design cues, and it'll be a real interesting comparison. So definitely check those out if you're interested. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you later. Take care.